I'm going to be picking up exactly where I left off, or almost exactly where I left off last night, and we'll, yeah, let's get rid of that, and have the camera on. Hello! Like I say, slightly more dressed down day today, which is nice. Now, where is flush holder can go, and let's have our OBS. Turn myself off there. There we go. So, I'm going to pick up almost exactly where I left off last night and jump right back into the tutorial. The idea here is I'm implementing this module and I kind of want to get it finished, having started it last night, but I also want to explain a few more little bits about the code and along the way. If you're a C# novice, or you don't necessarily want to learn all about C#, but you just want to maybe implement a couple of module ideas you've got, then this is hopefully the tutorial for you. Now, where we got to last night, we'd just about finished this little bit of script down here. We got it so that it was going to go through and determine which was the correct list of the list that we've got, which I've actually now mislaid. Let me bring the manual back up again. There it is, on the subject of keywords. Just pop it over there. So we're determined, that might even be a better place. We're determined which list to use using this edge work and the colour of the light. So we'd set the light colour, and then we determined which column was correct, and that was what was going on down here. Now I've got all this greyed out code here, that's just there to remind me. Normally I wouldn't put that in, but when I first started out I did leave myself little clues like that, just so that I could get used to the syntax of what was going on. It's not a bad thing to leave it in there, especially if it's going to help remind you what's going on. I want to express my thanks to Ash last night, AshTheBash, who I'm not sure if he's here today. I know he's at work at the moment, but he was a great help both in the chat, answering questions while I was working on here, and also in a couple of places where I got a little bit stuck with stuff. It's always nice to have people around, so thanks to Ash for that. And we've just done this pick words thing where we wanted to pick 4 words and add them into a little index up here, this index list. Chosen words indices, and it was going to display them on the screen. And the result of that was that it would pick the column and it will pick 4 different words for us: tachyphrasia, taphogenesis, taphidemalion, and tychoscopy. Tychoscopy? I can't speak today. But that's where we've gotten to with this, and we've even done a little bit of logging as well. The LED is orange, that's the only information we've got so far. Where we're going next, it's actually relatively close to completion, and there are a couple of things I did, just a couple of little tiny things while you were on. The first thing was I actually corrected the text where I'd forgotten to set the material up here, so when I brought it into the game, just to test after the stream went off last night, all the text was see-through both sides of it. So I corrected that, and I also rewrote the manual in HTML because I don't necessarily want that to be a subject of this tutorial. I think writing the manual is quite a tedious part of it, so actually I did this morning while listening to the radio, because I accidentally deleted it before, but now it's all there in HTML format. I haven't redone the component image yet, so that's something that I will show you how to do a little bit later on towards the end. I see, like, if else and for each. Yes, absolutely, Marcus. If else and for each. When certainly the if else one. That's how I coded pretty much all of my early modules. I just used if and else if to make sure it's done. There's probably a more efficient way of doing this, but as I was saying in the stream last night, when you first get started out, you don't want to learn everything there is to know about C# to do it in the most efficient way. Yes, it is less efficient to do it this way, and yes, it will take you longer, and yes, it's more prone to being slightly bugged as well. But you know what? That's kind of okay, I think, when you're first starting out, because the more mistakes you make, the easier you learn. If you don't make any mistakes, then you're never going to make anything. So we've picked the words that we're going to use, and what we want to do now, having picked the words, is log those words. Okay. Now, a couple of different ways you can do it. You can use a basic log and do 4 different log files. And this, to be fair, this is the sort of thing that I still do, even though there is a more efficient way of doing it. Once we've completed this for loop, it was going to iterate through this loop 4 times to pick the 4 different words. We could paste a little log into down here. Oh no, that's the wrong sort of log. We don't want that one. We want a log format one, like that, up there. And this has all the correct tags for the log file analyzer in. The way I would do this normally would be something like this. Again, this is not the most efficient way, but it is a way that it makes it very, very clear. I would say your chosen words are colon, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 in our curly braces there. And then I'm going to add what I want there. Now the words we've chosen have been added to this chosen words indices. So we're going to go chosen words indices 0, comma, and then we're going to copy and paste that and just change the index at the end for 4 of those. So that's going to be the 4th chosen word, the 3rd chosen word, and the 2nd chosen word. Remembering, of course, that lists and indexes start from 0. Computers count from 0 rather than 1. That's why everything is 1 less. And of course, we want a little semicolon on the end of that line. So now, when we play it, we'll get a new little log at the bottom. Incidentally, I haven't got the chat open on my phone today, so I will check it periodically from time to time. Now, we've got a problem there. Your chosen words are 10, 19, 7 and 4. Now, that's not what we want because they're not our chosen words. Those are just the indices that were picked, and those indices are referred to a different list. And the list that's being referred to is this one, the correct column. Now, the correct column was the list that I compiled earlier on, which shows us the correct column. And we want the places of those numbers of that column. So the correct column will be populated with all the words from the correct column. And then we want this index, chosen words indices 0, that is actually going to be our reference point. So this is where we're going to do little double index references, and I'm going to do this little shortcut way by highlighting all of them like this. And there we go, and putting square brackets around all of them. So now that's going to get that an index of an index essentially, and the list we actually want to use is this correct column one. And we'll see if this works in a minute. And we paste that in. So what this is now telling us is that we want the correct column, and we want the index of this index. So the chosen words indices are all is a list of integers, and we want the first element of this list. So it's sort of a a double number index is what we're having there. And so now, when we run it, if I've done that correctly, which it looks like I have, and press play, it should now read out our words. Your chosen words are Terpsichorean, Tautocronus, Tachyphrasia, Tatterdemalion. So hopefully that's reasonably clear what I've done there. I don't want the 0th position of the correct column, because if I just call the 0th position of the correct column, it's just going to give us the first word of whatever the correct column is. So if it was this column, that's not helpful. If it was this column, for example, and we pick 0, it would always take in tachygraphy. But we don't want that one. We want whatever word was selected, which might have been the 17th one, but it's first in the new list, which might be tabernacle. Hopefully that makes some sort of sense to you. Now there's a more efficient way of writing this code, which I'm just going to show you briefly. If I can find an old script. I did this in Skyrim, so let's just bring up my Skyrim script. And it used this. So if I'm just going to copy this line of code in, oh, not that one, that one, just to show you the alternative way of writing this, T words, and you say your chosen words are, colon, what I'll do is just replace that with ampersand, and then it's only listing one thing to put into this log here, rather than here I've got 4 separate entries, 4 separate elements into this log. Here it's only got one, because here it's just going to list the whole string. Now to do that, we need to do something like this little block of code we've got here. So we've got string.join, and then that means it's going to be a comma with the space after each one. We want correct column, chosen words indices dot select x dot next. Now I'm not sure if that's going to compile, which is why I'm probably not going to use this line of code. Let's just have a little look and see what happens. No, it doesn't like that 117 because of character thing. So let's just get rid of dot name. Oh no, it definitely didn't like that. It's something to do with selecting a character. I know why. It's because I'm selecting x, where x is a character, and we're actually iterating numbers. So it's something like that, but I'm not going to go into too much detail about that right now because I'm not going to use it. Because the one I've got, while it's longer, works fine for what we need. Love the non-lacking alliteration in your manual. Like, absolutely. Inside more advanced logic code, if else is highly necessary, as in one of my spelling. Cool. And yeah, I use if and else more sparingly in more recent modules, but particularly if I'm using, because I don't tend to use edgework quite as much anymore. Okay, so we've picked our words and we've logged what they are. Where do we want to go next? Well, let's go back to our coding plan. Pick 4 words at random and assign to the buttons. Determine the correct order of those words. Okay, so what we need to do now is figure out which order we need to press them in. Now, I talked about this list. This is the indices of the list that has been compiled. What we want to do is sort that list so that it's in ascending order, because that will put the words into the correct order. So what I'm going to do is actually create a new list, a private list, int chosen words indices ordered, we'll call that, equals new list int parentheses. Okay, and again this is just a little block of code that tells us here is a new list that we're creating, a new list of integers which is going to start at 0. One thing we're going to have to bear in mind at some point is that before we go back into doing this again, well, like when we strike, for example, we're going to have to clear these lists. Okay, so I'll hopefully remember that later on, because if we don't clear them and we strike, it's just going to keep repopulating them. So if we strike lots of times, we're going to have a really, really long list of words, because it's going to keep adding 4 more every time we run through these methods down here. So we need to make sure every time we're going to run into the start method, we're going to clear those lists. But we'll do that a bit later on when we get there. So we've got our new indices, and we're going to order that. Before we do that, we're going to start a new method, which is called determine order. Come down here, put it under there, void determine order. Now, at this point, I'm going to try and do it from memory, but I might show you a little coding secret. There's a coding secret, and it's called Google. Efficient Googling is really, really handy when it comes to sorting things out. Because there's some things that you'll remember because you're doing them all the time, and there's some things that you might need to want to go back and check. And eventually, over time, you do start to memorize stuff. Like when I first learned how to do a for loop, I used to have to check every time that my syntax was correct and the layout was correct and so on. Now I'm at a position where I don't need to do that quite so much, but there are some things that I do need to. But I'm going to see if I can do it from memory first of all. So this is our new list we want to populate. Chosen words orders indices ordered equals. We want it to be the same as that, but ordered. So if we go dot sort, I think that might be it. Let's find out, shall we? It's not. Cannot implicitly convert type void to system collections.generic list. Maybe I don't need parentheses then. No, it doesn't like that either. Okay, so what we're going to do, it said use parentheses, so we do want parentheses. So let's look at this error more closely, and then I'm going to go to Google and find out what the answer is. Cannot implicitly convert type void to system.collections.generic.list. So at the moment it's trying to convert a method into a list, which means I've maybe set something up incorrectly. Or possibly not. Let's go to Google and see what Google is going to tell us. So we want to find out how to sort an int list in C#. And there we go, sorting a list. Stack Overflow is a really helpful site for this. It is literally list.sort. So actually I don't need to do the equal things, I can just go that, and that will sort my list. Now, what I was trying to do there was duplicate the list from one to another, so that we've got a copy of the original one, and we've got a copy of the newly ordered one. So we could do it that way. The way we'd want to do it, though, is we'd have to add them in manually. So that's fine. I'm going to do that. I'm going to keep them separate. I'm going to have one with the original order and one with the newly ordered one. So we'll have two lists to work with. But first of all, I'm going to need to populate my new one. So chosen words, indices, ordered. In fact, I'm going to put this inside a for loop. For int I equals 0. I is less than or equal to 3, because it's only going to be 3 long. I plus plus, so it's only going to be 4 long. So we're going to do this line of code 4 times, and we want to go chosen words, indices, ordered dot add chosen words, indices, I. And what that's going to do is it's going to add each one of those, so basically essentially duplicate this list into this list. Okay. Then once we've got our newly populated list, we can then sort that one out into order. So if we've done this correctly, let's find out, shall we? We'll go debug.log chosen indices chosen words indices 0 plus comma space plus. This is not an efficient way of doing the code, but I'm just demonstrating. Hopefully this is making more sense the more I do this, as to demonstrating what logging is for. So I'm going to log, first of all, 4 numbers in the original order they were picked. I'm then going to log the 4 numbers from my new list, which has them ordered. So if we put that there, let's see if this has worked. First of all, it'll rebuild it, tell me if there's any errors. There aren't. It'll finish compiling, and we hit play. Now that happened to pick them in order anyway, 5, 9, 13, 16, 5, 9, 13, 16. So let's see if we can't get a... There we go. So this first one, it picked them in the order 12, 3, 13, 4. And let's see, the second one has ordered them 3, 4, 12, 13. So that's worked really well. So what this has done is that is the 12th entry on the list. That is the 3rd entry. That is the 13th. That is the 4th. And the reason we order them is because we need to know which order to press them. We need to press them 3, 4, 12, 13. So that's why we've got our 2 lists there. So in that first example, where the list was the same, that would have been 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the order we're going to press them. So this shows me that those lists are working correctly, and I'm just going to cross-reference this with the manual, because what I haven't told in the log yet is which column we're using, which we need to add in at some point. But let's just see, 3, 4, 12, 13, 12 and 3. 12 should be tectosphere, and 3 should be tychoscopy. So what's it for 3? 3. see it's the fourth one, and again this is my index problem, because it would have logged eventually. If I do this, we'll get one that says 0. So in the log we're probably going to end up adding 1. So I'll just keep doing this a few times. We'll find one with 0 eventually. There we go. So the third word down here, tachygraphy, should be in the first position because it's 0 there. Let's have a look. I see, there we go. So this is going to be an otherwise use this column. So we're going to check through these, use if there are more than 4 batteries. One battery widget, another battery widget. So there's going to be 3 D batteries. So let me just check it with the text minus. It tells us that actually. No. So there are 3 batteries. Otherwise used if they're an unlit bulb or FRK. There are no indicators at all, so it's not that one. Use if there is a serial port and a DVID port. There is a serial, there is a DVID, but also the LED is not blue. It is, so we move on to the next one. Use if the serial number does not contain a vowel. The serial number does contain a vowel, so it therefore must be this column. So that is logging beautifully, and it is working correctly, which is great, and exactly what we want. Just pop that back over there. Oh, I've got 5 messages on Discord. I'll go and check those in a minute. Okay, now we know it's logging correctly. We don't actually need to keep this log in here, because that's just for our benefit. Let me just check in with the chat, see how everyone is getting on. Efficient Googling, yes. 1014 to list command, yeah, to list or no. So Marcus has just come up with another alternative as to what we could do there. Rather than creating a global list up here, we could create another list and instead just go chosen words indices dot to list, or even chosen words order. We would still need to create it there. Equals chosen words indices dot to list. So that, I think, should do the exact same function as that little for statement that we just made there. And Marx is going to confirm that in the chat for me, like a good fella. What I'm going to do actually is copy that, undo that, and bring the logs back, and just check that. Paste that back in. I'm hoping that that is doing the exact same thing as the to list. 5, 8, 17, 12, 5, 8, 12, 17. It certainly looks like it. So that's a more efficient way than doing the for loop. And again, this is just knowing things off pat like to list, which I do know, but isn't necessarily at the tip of my tongue. I'm slightly clock watching because I've got 2 hours left on this stream and I want to get the whole thing finished. So thank you, Marcus. That's a much more efficient way of doing that code. Thank you very much.